Very good evening to you all. Good evening, everybody here as well. And we have the usual format for this winter retreat time. We'll have some time to meditate together. First of all, 40 minutes or so. I'll give a little bit of guidance at the beginning of the meditation session and kind of leading into the subject for this evening, which I'll be speaking about after the meditation. I won't tell you what it is. We'll see. Keep you in suspense. Some of you might be able to guess, those of you who've been following the Satipatthana Sutta teachings, but it doesn't matter whether you know or not. We'll just begin. So let's start with our meditation practice. Please make yourselves comfortable. And however comfortable you can be, have an upright posture. Seated perhaps in some way. And we can bring our attention to the posture, first of all, to feel out what is an upright and an energized posture that is also paradoxically, perhaps a little bit paradoxically, very relaxed. And this is so possible, isn't it? Because actually, the more correct our posture is, the more upright we can be, the more relaxed we can be. Because the skeleton will hold the body, and the muscles, especially the arms and the legs, the shoulders and the hips, can relax, can let go of any tension. So it's good to feel out these big muscles of the torso, shoulders, the hips, the belly also. Just see how there may be some holding in these areas, and through paying attention really, to see how we can relax. The sense of softening, releasing, letting go. As the skeleton, the spine, the hip bones align in such a way that we are sitting up. So there's space for all the organs of the body, within the belly, within the chest, to have space. No constriction anywhere. The head sitting in a relaxed, upright manner at the top of the spine. So we would be looking ahead if we had our eyes open. Feeling out the body in these ways, setting the scene for our practice, giving the body the best. And so also enabling the chitta, the mind, heart, to be alert, attentive, present. And I'd like to give just a few suggestions for this practice time in the way of contemplations as we sit, as we attend to this body, to this breath. I would like to invite you to just consider, as we sit, the concept of time, the passage of time in relation to this body. Aging is such a slow process that it's often indiscernible moment to moment. But if we consider year by year how these bodies change, let's just consider, how was this body at birth? This same body, however many years ago. We may not have a memory of being embodied at birth, but we know what babies look like. Newborns, many of us, most of us have seen. We were once that. Is there anything in this body that remains from that time? Do we have any memory of being very small, incapable of walking, incapable of sitting up, not even able to lift our heads up? Can we feel that? Different proportions, great big head, little chubby limbs. All we could do was thrush about, prone. Some people can remember these things. But whether we have a physical, visceral memory or not, we can consider this body through time. Body of an infant, of a toddler. Can we remember those first steps? Or having to pull ourselves up and hold on to things to stay upright? Can we remember how this body used to run around, fall over a lot, and have grazes on its knees and elbows? Perhaps most of us might remember that. Or perhaps we might remember our first time on a bicycle. How was the body then? How did it feel? We may recall learning to swim. What was it like before we could swim? And as the time comes closer to the present, the memories are more easily accessible. We can all remember puberty, when we started to change physically in ways that were quite, in some ways, challenging, perhaps. Getting used to having sexual bodies. And how was that? We may remember how important it seemed, this body, at certain stages, how it looked, comparing it to other bodies. this child body, this teenage body, is there anything of that left? Is there any part that remains? Can we remember the older ones here, when our bodies moved without great effort or discomfort? We could jump and run, no problem, lots of energy. When our fingers were straight, our knees were healthy. We didn't have aches and pains. We would not have known anything about that. And I'd like to invite all of us to just cast the mind forward in time and consider how this body is moving, how this body is aging. How is it going to continue? For some, it's a practice of imagination. It's for a few moments to imagine how it might be to have an old body. For some, it's in process, and we can consider how it's going to unfold over time. The bits that have started to sag and droop will continue to do so. The weakness will grow. The joints will get stiffer and perhaps more painful, swollen, or even distorted, so that our function in the hands or the feet, knees, shoulders, the hips may not be so easeful. The skin is changing. Imagine how the skin will continue to change and become thinner, blotchy, wrinkled, sagging. Instead of this body, imagine this body changing in this way over time. Aging. The hair will perhaps become thinner, be dropping out in places, changing colour. The eyes deteriorating, the hearing diminishing, the taste and smell fading. Perhaps our ability to balance may decrease. Our ability to move about may become more limited. And our reactions slower. And our posture may become less upright. And our sense of touch may become duller. See if you can follow through the inevitable changes ahead. And consider the mortal nature of this form, that it is inevitably going to cease, to pass away, to die. And we imagine ourselves taking our last breath, eating the last meal, or perhaps we might be lying in bed, very weak, nothing else to do, just to be present, breath by breath. Maybe the extremities getting colder, the heartbeat getting weaker, the breath becoming slower or more shallow or changing in some way or other. This time will come for us. We can kind of rehearse, familiarize ourselves, take this opportunity to contemplate this body through time. The nature taking its course, natural unfolding. So I'd like to invite you to continue meditation, and if you'd like to continue to consider this particular contemplation, to really feel out how it goes. How it is now, where it's come from, and see the fullness of this cycle. Breath by breath, taking the attention around the body, inside and out, considering the changes that have happened, that are happening, and that will happen in every part of the body. And I'll ring the gong in about 20 minutes or so. So we can just gently, when you're ready, opening the eyes and feeling free to have a good stretch, to move about if you need to move about, to be comfortable. And I'm going to share some words on Dharma next. I've been asked to make a couple of dedications this evening. For our time together, let's dedicate our practice to Master Xin Yung from Taiwan, who passed away recently. He was the founder of Fo Guangshan monasteries in Taiwan. In respectful memory of the Master, and also, as many of us are aware, there's been a huge earthquake, hasn't there, in Turkey and Syria, and so many people adversely affected, people who've been killed, people very impacted by this. It's hard to imagine the extent of the human suffering here, so we can consider and share merits and think of those people and all those animals and other beings there. And so before I speak on Dharma, I'd like to pay respects to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So we've been moving through, slowly but surely, the Satipatthana Sutta, great teachings from the Lord Buddha. And we've reached the point where we're still in the Kayanupassana section. As you know, we're observing the body in all different ways. And on Sunday evening, Ayatollah Loka gave a wonderful teaching about the refrain, which comes after every contemplation the Buddha gives us. There is the same refrain. I couldn't possibly add to her teachings, but I do recommend tuning in. Anyone who missed that great talk on Sunday night, which really gives a lot of understanding of how to practice these contemplations given to us by the Buddha. So this next section is the cemetery or charnel ground observations. And I think the best thing I can do for those who may not be so familiar with the sutta is to read a little bit from the Satipatthana Sutta to impart what it is that this teaching is about. So this is another way the Buddha has given us to consider the body, contemplate this body. As though one were to see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, 1, 2, or 3 days dead, bloated, livid, and oozing matter. We can compare this same body with that. This body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. In this way, we can abide observing the body as a body internally and externally, arising and passing, abiding independently, not clinging to anything in this world. This is how we abide, contemplating the body as a body. And the Buddha goes on describing for us the various stages of decay, the changes that happen in the body, this body, after death. He says, again, as though we were to see a corpse thrown aside in a charnel ground, being devoured by crows, hawks, vultures, dogs, jackals, all various kinds of worms. We can compare this same body with that. This body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. The Buddha goes on to describe a skeleton then will remain with flesh and blood held together by sinews, which becomes a fleshless skeleton, smeared with blood, held together with sinews, which becomes a skeleton without flesh and blood, still held together by sinews, and lastly, disconnected bones, scattered in all directions, a hand bone there, a foot bone here a shin bone, there a thigh bone, here a hip bone, there a back bone, here a rib, there a breastbone, here an arm bone, there a shoulder bone, a neck bone, a jaw bone, a tooth over there, and here the skull. In this same way, we can consider this body too is of the same nature. It will be like that. It is not exempt from that fate. And finally, the Buddha describes, after some time has passed, then the bones will be bleached white, the color of shells. Bones heaped up, more than a year old. Bones rotted and crumbled to dust. And in the same way, we can consider that these bodies have the same fate. They will, at some point in the future, be just like that, until there's absolutely nothing left at all. So these charnel ground contemplations, there are 9 different stages of the description that the Buddha gives of the changes that happen after death. And I guess in the time of the Buddha, it must have been fairly common that bodies would be discarded in that way, left out in nature. I know in the Tibetan tradition, they have the sky burial, don't they? And the body is kind of chopped up and put out for the vultures and other beings to devour it, which is really sensible when you think about it. It's a really good gift to nature to let the body be food, just as we spend our lives eating all sorts of other beings. Even if we're vegetarian, then when the body passes away, how nice, how generous to share it as food for other beings. But mostly we don't do that. We burn bodies, don't we? Or we bury them in the ground, which is another way of doing that. We cremate, we bury, we have different customs, but presumably at the time of the Buddha, there would be these places, and actually the monks could go there, people could go and meditate. In Thailand, we have stories of monks not so very long ago going to the charnel grounds to contemplate the bodies that are left there before they're cremated. And people also, of course, attend open-air cremations in Asian countries, and they have the chance to see the bodies burning up, and so on. So these ways of contemplating would have been very doable at the time of the Buddha. And for us today, it's not so easy, especially in the West, because often these processes are kind of very discreetly done. We don't like to really look at or be around dead bodies. And in some ways that's natural, and also maybe we miss out to some extent, don't we? Because we kind of hide these things away, and we don't have the chance then to do this kind of contemplation or to have these kind of experiences. So this is a really valuable teaching here in the Satipatthana Sutta for us to consider. And just as in the guided meditation, I was trying to encourage this sense of really trying to bring these contemplations home. So this body, this one is aging, this one is going to go through death, and it will decay and disappear eventually in just these ways. And why would we want to think about that instead of just being in the present moment? Present moment awareness, is that not enough? Present moment awareness is wonderful, but we can actually benefit, the Buddha's telling us, from considering the body in all these different ways. What is the benefit of these charnel ground or these cemetery contemplations? There are so many benefits. We can try it out for ourselves and see. There's a strong encouragement when we consider the aging and death of the body to let go of identification with it. There is the sense of the kind of repulsiveness of the body, isn't there? When we think about dead things, consider them. The mind actually wants to sort of shy away. I noticed that myself. Don't really want to go there. Also, for me personally, to consider this body aging, like I was just doing while we're meditating, there can be a feeling of great sadness. I don't know if any of you felt that. A feeling of sadness, it's kind of tragic. And yet, that feeling of sadness and sorrow for this body is actually surely an indicator that there's attachment. There's attachment to this form. And so when we contemplate the aging and the death of the body, we get a chance, we get the opportunity to focus on, to see, to feel out, don't we, our attachment to this body, which is surely something we want to be free from. We want to investigate. We want to understand. And in investigating and understanding this, we can let go. So the sense of identification with the body is a source of great suffering for us. If we don't work with this and appreciate this issue while we're alive, while we're well, while we're healthy, while we're young, then as we get older, and particularly when it comes to the time of death, then it's going to be very traumatic for us. Can we spare ourselves that trauma? Can we allow ourselves to prepare? So one of the other benefits of these kind of contemplations, we can call them charnel ground contemplations, we can call them death contemplations. One of the big benefits is this sense of disidentification, and also the opportunity to prepare, to be ready, to have a curiosity about the whole process. It can be an opportunity to develop this enlightenment factor, can't it, of Dhammavichaya, investigation of Dhamma. If we put this to the fore, if we have this as our priority, then we become more curious than afraid, don't we? We're more interested than wishing to turn away from this reality. And we're, instead of facing trauma, we're going to be deepening our practice, taking the opportunity that death gives us to really very fully and completely let go There's also, for me, a big benefit here in this type of contemplation of death, and also the process of bodily change all the way through old age to death and beyond, to the decay of the body. It is a great remedy for sense desire, isn't it? Just like the 31, 32 parts of the body contemplation, where we divide and dissect the body up into all its components and just look at them all individually and assess. What's this really like? What's this kidney really like? Is it mine? Do I want to identify with it? Is it beautiful? And so forth. In the same way, when we consider the aging and death and decay of the body, we can really work with very skillfully with sense desire and see right through it. Let it go. It helps us to calm down if lust and desire and passion are issues for us. And there's wonderful stories and poems from the monks and nuns at the time of the Buddha, many references to the body and the suffering that we have when we identify with the body, and ways in which arahants became arahants through contemplating death, contemplating corpses in the charnel grounds, and recognizing the peril, in a way. The peril, not the peril of dying, not the peril of death, but the peril of attachment to the body. Death is natural, of course. Death, in a way, doesn't exist for us. If we don't identify with this body, then death is not an issue for us. It's not a problem for us. If we don't identify with the five khandhas, I should say. If we don't identify with the body, we can be a lot more peaceful around death, a lot more curious, a lot more ready to open to the next thing, and the next thing, the next moment, and the next moment. If we can disidentify with all five khandhas, so that by that I mean the body and also the mind, then there's nothing to fear, because we understand that there is no death. There is nothing that dies, because nothing was ever constructed. If there's no constructions, then there's nothing to die. And to realize this is to appreciate the deathless, isn't it? And we're all moving in that direction. And these types of contemplations take us there. So to see where the mind wants to shy away from the truth of death, of decay, of aging, these contemplations are to show us where there's anything that's still dukkha for us, anything that's still holding on, anything that's still identifying with this body and with this mind. So we have a chance to prepare. That's the other thing I feel very much is of great benefit in these charnel ground contemplations, to really come home to our situation here, to prepare, to live in such a way that we are ready. What does that do to the mind, to consider that death could come at any time? The Buddha invited us not only to do these charnel ground contemplations, but also to again and again reflect that this breath could be our last, that this mouthful of food could be our last. So the imminence of death is something also that the Buddha really encouraged us to develop. So as Buddhists, we are working with, appreciating and letting go of that natural reluctance to remember, to consider, to appreciate our trajectory here, the trajectory of this body, of this life. And we get to open up to the bigger picture, don't we? The bigger picture, the gigantic planetary recycling plant. We've got quite good, or to some extent, we've got good at recycling things, haven't we? So we have the concept of, I use this thing, I put it somewhere, and then it gets reused. It gets reformed in a way that it can have another use, another purpose. I'm not just chucking it over my shoulder and forgetting all about it. Actually, we still behave like adolescents mostly and do just that. But there is a little bit of recycling that happens, and a little bit of care nowadays, isn't there, with all the stuff that we use. And just appreciating that these bodies are exactly the same. This body, this form is going through this particular process of being a body, and then death will come soon enough, and it will turn into something else. It will break up, and it will be nourishment, and it will be kind of moving into other forms over time. And how wonderful, how natural, how ludicrous to consider that it might be the same for any two moments together. And how ludicrous to feel badly about its breaking up, really. We can consider in this way, this letting go. Even if we haven't let go of this body and identification with this body, we can certainly recognize it when we do these charnel ground contemplations. See what they bring up for you. When we consider that death could come at any time, how does that feel? What's the feeling? Is there a feeling of fear? Is there a feeling of grief? Is there a great big no, a feeling of resistance? This is our Dharma then. This is the food for contemplation. This is what we need to consider. It's bringing it home, the reality of this process. And as we do this, from day to day, over months, weeks, years, over a lifetime, we can really notice that we get to make peace with this process. And it's almost like stepping back from the individual, which is always a tragedy. The individual, the realm of me. It's always it's a story with a very sad ending. But we get to step back from that, and we get to see the bigger picture. The inevitability of death, death leading to birth, death and birth, death and birth. This incredible process of change. Can we flow with that? Instead of resisting that, we get to flow with that, don't we? The more we can work through the resistances, the fears, and the holding on to this body, this mind. So I really encourage everybody, to make much of these teachings of the Lord Buddha, make much of the contemplations on the body parts, the 31, 32 body parts, the contemplations on the elements, breaking up the body into its constituent 4 great elements or 5 great elements. And these charnel ground contemplations, which are often kind of skimmed over, not considered very much because, well, it's not like that anymore. We don't have those charnel grounds. We don't get to see corpses yet. We don't need to. It's actually quite good to seek out such opportunities, but we don't need to do that. We just want to bring these contemplations to this form and allow the imagination to come in to just to the extent that we're allowing ourselves to relate to the reality of this body through time and allow that to inform us. So these are just some reflections on body awareness and charnel brown contemplations and how we can kind of integrate the two, you know, to make it real for us. So it's not something out there. It's actually quite helpful as well, just to point out that yes, it's good too, as the Buddha told us in the Satipatthana Sutta, to consider this body and to consider all the other bodies, all the other beings. And yes, we can bring this in also, because actually it's almost more natural for the mind when we consider death and decay to think of others, because we may have experienced the death of a loved one or a pet or, you know, a family member. And often the mind will actually kind of almost strangely prefer to be with that than to be with the possibility of this one's demise. But actually the Buddha encouraged both, didn't he? So to really bring these contemplations home for this body, but also, yeah, we can reflect and we can learn so much from our experience of loss of the other, death of the other. There are some practitioners who will use, you know, any sight, any experience of death in nature around us, small beings, animals, plants, flowers on the shrine, and so forth, all these things. Constantly, if we look around, we're seeing dead things, we're seeing things decaying. To use those experiences as well to keep coming home to this aspect of the recycling process. And yeah, when we experience death of loved ones, how powerful this is for us, emotionally, physically, psychologically, on every level. The impact can be very great, can't it? And all of this is an opportunity for us to investigate Dharma with great compassion, you know, but also with a willingness to understand dukkha, the dukkha here, and in understanding the dukkha here, to allow for the letting go, you know, to disidentify, to let go of our attachments, to free the heart, to free up. These spiritual opportunities, these experiences, these beings who are our teachers, who are our Devadutas, who are the heavenly messengers for us, those who die before we do, those who get sick, those who are aging around us. Let's open our eyes, open our hearts, and really see, empathize with, compassionately observe, and taking it all in. We can get wise before we get old. You know, we don't have to be getting old ourselves right now. Well, we're all getting old, of course, but we can feel when we're young that, you know, this is all very far in the future somewhere, you know. It's wise. It's really a very good idea for even the young ones to open up to this, open up to these contemplations. And it's interesting how for young people it's even more difficult to work with the resistance that can come up when we contemplate death. All the more beneficial all the more powerful as a practice then. But I'm aware of this. I'm aware that we used to get school visits when I was in monasteries in the UK, and the kids would come and we'd take them into the chapel of rest. And sometimes there would be a body in the chapel of rest, not very often actually, but there was always the skeleton. And we, use the skeleton as a sort of springboard for some Dharma teachings, and start to talk a little bit about aging, death and decay. And you could literally see teenagers, school kids just backing off, recoiling in horror. And you'd have to gauge, how much could be said that would be useful. And then it was inevitably not very much, just a little touching in, but how valuable. Particularly asking the question, anybody in this class, anybody in this group, has anybody lost a family member? Has anybody experienced death in their family? And inevitably, a few hands would go up, and a sense of that's good for that group to recognize this, because kids often, if somebody has passed away, they don't have a chance to really process it because nobody wants to know. It's not something that the other kids will talk about very much. And it may be that the adults around them also don't want to talk about it with them. I think they're protecting the child, perhaps. But what children really need when they've lost a brother or a sister or a parent is a chance to express how it is, isn't it? And the chance to be heard and to know that perhaps others have had the same experience. So kids would put their hands up and they'd be looking at each other, and the sense of relief and the sense of connection would be quite palpable. So it's never too early to open the heart to the life cycle, the birth, youth, middle age, aging and death. And it doesn't matter how young a person is, the Buddha's teachings are helpful, even in this regard, to be able to just open and not be afraid, isn't it, to talk about or to acknowledge that loss is around us, loss is everywhere, people are dying all the time. So, yep, it's good to, I would say, bring these contemplations here and really make this body our main kind of lens through which we can contemplate death and decay in life and decay after passing away. Imagine these bodies, imagine their trajectory. Let it be a source of rich Dhamma for us, and also consider all that we see of death, all that we experience of death around us, and let it be not merely a source of grief and sadness and loss, which of course it is, that's part of it, quite naturally, but also, and more importantly, a source of wisdom, of compassion, of liberation for the heart. Well. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So thank you everybody for your patient listening, and I'm now going to stop the live stream, say goodbye to everybody watching on YouTube.